everyone, welcome to another video. Today I want to share with you how to use your creative corners from MISTI with your Joy Clair stamps. So I've got my creative corners here, and this comes with 5 pieces. You've got this right angle, then you've got 2 more right angles that are in more of a triangle form with 3 magnets in them. Those are going to be great for holding things in place too. You've also got this triangle with less of a slope. It's got rulers on 2 sides, on the 2 straight edge sides. And then you have this other triangle, which is more of a right triangle. And again, it has the rulers on both sides. I'll be using my original MISTI today, but I did want to share with you how you can use these in your mini MISTI. The ones that you need to kind of watch out for and fiddle around with a little bit are this right corner. You need to use it in between the hinges. Now the right angle triangle does fit perfectly. You can use it in either corner that you see here. The one that is has a little bit less of a slant to it, you need to use vertically. You can't use it horizontally the long way. It just doesn't fit the MISTI. The hinges get in the way, but you can still use it. You just need to turn your MISTI around. The stamps that I'm going to be using on my first card, I'll be doing 3 cards today, is the Refuel My Soul from Joy Clair Stamps. I'll be pairing it with the Hello Sentiment stamp set to make this Color by Faith series stamp set into something more everyday. I'm going to be making it into a birthday card. The first thing I want to do is I've got my panel of white cardstock in my MISTI. Now this measures 4 by 5 and a quarter, so slightly smaller than your A2 size. And I'm using that triangle that has a little bit less of a slant to it to line up my little car here, my little VW bug, and I'm putting it at an angle to make it look like it's climbing up a hill. So I bumped up those tires right next to it. Then I picked up my stamp with the lid of my MISTI, removed that triangle piece, and now I can stamp this car down right onto my paper. Now you can put this at any angle if you want to, but you're gonna see why I wanted that guide later on. I need it to be able to create a road underneath this car essentially, so I want the angle to be exactly the same. I've stamped that a few times on my panel with some Memento Tuxedo Black ink because I'll be using my alcohol markers to color that in. Now here's where I'm going to put my black panel right into my MISTI, exactly the same place, line up my triangle on that panel, and draw where I need that road to be. So because my wheels were bumped up right against it, all I need to do is just draw a line right above where that ends. Then I can use my paper trimmer to trim it out, and there you can see once I attach that, it looks like the car is driving on the road. It's the perfect angle. It worked out beautifully. Now to color this in, like I said before, I did use Memento because I'm going to be coloring these in with my alcohol markers very quickly. Now I'm going with colors here, blues, because my father-in-law actually has a bug that looks like identical to this car. He bought it to take his grandkids on rides. They love it. It's a lot of fun, so I figured this would be a great image to make a birthday card for him. So I'm going to color it in exactly like his car actually is. So I've got my blues out. I added just a tiny bit of shading, and then I added some grays to where the bumper and the grill of the car are. I'll color in the tires black. The centers of those are of course gray, and I'm using a little bit of light blue to color in the windows. I made a mask with that same stamp set and Ink-a-Dink-a-Doo masking paper, and I'm using some Salty Ocean to add a little bit of a background right around that car. Nothing extreme here. I'm really going for a more clean and simple and masculine look here. So I just want a little bit to help that car pop out from that stark white background. Now to make sure I don't go overboard with my ink, I just keep pulling in that black panel that I'm going to place underneath my car to make sure that I've got enough ink, but I'm not overdoing it either. I don't want it to go all the way up the paper, but I do want it to connect to where the road ends. So once I had my ink exactly how I wanted it, I went ahead and pulled off my mask. Now I will keep that mask and use it again, so I just place it onto the back of the stamp set. So if I go to use it, I don't have to hunt down my mask. I know where it is, and I know I have one already made. So I don't go make 3 and 4 of the same thing that I already have done. Now once that was finished, it was time to move on to the sentiment. I'm using the Hello Sentiment stamp set from Joy Clair. This is one of my all-time favorite sentiment sets ever. I like to use this no matter what kind of card I'm doing. It's a builder set. So you've got some really scripty words in there to kind of start out your sentiment or to have one word emphasized, and then you've got some really small nice sentiments to finish it off. It gives it a really cool look, especially for the more masculine cards. So I'm starting off with the sending word, and I have lined this up onto a white banner that I created. I just cut a piece of white cardstock that was about an inch and a quarter thick to fit this sentiment. And then I just cut up from the center on one side and then cut in at both corners to that line that I had already cut. I just did mine on the right hand side, and then I used that little right corner that is included in the Creative Corners with the magnets in it to kind of bump my little banner away from the edges. This is going to allow me to use that stamp, stamp it down, and get it in the same spot every single time. I'll go more in depth on that on another card, but that piece alone right there that I just used in the Creative Corner stamp set is worth the entire cost of the entire set, in my opinion. It has saved me on so many cards just in the short time that I've been playing around with these. I went ahead and popped up that black panel with just, or I didn't pop it up, I just used regular adhesive on it, and then I popped up the little banner on the front. Now to finish off the inside of this card, I used the little gas tank, colored it in, fussy cut it out, and attached it to the inside of the card. And then the inside, I'm just going to stamp the rest of my sentiment. So I have sending on the front, and then I'll just put birthday wishes from that same stamp set. I just built it up and I stamped it down right next to that little gas tank, and that will finish off the inside of the card. Now this is a little plain on the front, even for me, so I'm going to go in and add a few enamel accents in black. I like to use these or like the Nouveau drops, especially for more masculine cards, instead of sequins or something shiny. These are nice, very plain to add to the front of your card, so there's nothing feminine about it. I did apply a little bit of glossy accents to all of the windows as well, just for a little dimension and a little fun to add to that card. I like to use an odd number of these, so I did apply 5 of these right around the card, and that is going to finish off that card completely. Here's a final close-up look at that. You can get a closer look at the glossy accents on the windows and just how right of an angle by using that Creative Corner made for the road and the car itself. I love the way this turned out, and even though his birthday's a few months off, I've got this card ready to go now, so I'm ahead of the game. There's a closer look at the inside of the card as well, and now I'm going to move on to my next card. So for this one, I'm going to be using a different stamp set. This is called Best Buds, and it's got all these great little critters, but the great thing about this is it's not just one, but it's 2 little critters together. So it's great to send for any friends or family members. I'm going to be using a few of these images, but remember, you can switch this card up and use any images in that stamp set. The first thing I want to do is create some openings or little windows for my card. So I've got circle dies, 3 different sizes that fit the images I chose. I laid those out on a panel that is A2 sized, and I went ahead and ran that through my die cutting machine. Now in order to get all of these little animals lined up, I'm going to pop them through that frame. So I've laid the frame over an A2 top folding card base, and to make sure that I've got enough room on this to make sure everything lines up and I don't bump up against the right hand side or the bottom edge with any of my stamps, I've used that little corner piece. That corner piece is to pop up any piece of paper that needs to be away from the edge when you're using your MISTI. So if you're stamping off the side, if you have a little bit too large of a stamp that you just want to stamp on the edge or something, this pops your paper away from the edge so you can do that. But each and every time you can go right back into that right angle and line it up perfectly. Now before I had this piece, I would try to take a little pin, mark where I had my corner, and inevitably it wouldn't be in the right position. By bumping this into that corner, it has saved me so many cards, especially the ones where I'm doing patterns and that kind of thing. It just really helps out. Now I went ahead and lined up all the stamps through those frames. I can stamp 3 at once because I'm using my MISTI, and I'm stamping them down with some Memento Tuxedo Black ink. I am stamping directly on my card base. This will bleed through to the inside of my card. That doesn't bother me. I can cover it up with a panel on the inside, use some pattern paper or something fun. If it bothers you, just pop another panel over the top of your card and stamp on that. Now to create my little background, or it's actually going to be my frame piece, so it'll be in the foreground, I want to add something to it though. There's this little BFF stamp in the Best Bud stamp set, and I want to create a little pattern paper with this stamp. I'm using that right angle triangle there, and I am bumping up that BFF along that line. Now again, I have popped this frame away from both edges because I will be stamping off the side. So I need it to be away from that right hand side. I've went ahead and used that piece, popped in my paper in the corner of that, then placed my triangle down, bumped my stamp up against it. Then whenever I go to move this down the line, I know it's going to be a perfectly vertical line. Before I had this piece, I would use pencil marks. Then I'd have to go back and erase the pencil marks, but I would also have to be really careful not to do any stamping over the pencil mark, because you know, if you've done that, if you get even a speck of ink on that pencil, it's not going to come up. It's stuck there. You cannot get it up unless you kind of scratch it away, which then can leave, it messes up your stamp. It just doesn't work out as well. So I like to use this, bump up my stamp right to that. I know it's going to be straight each and every time. Now to go up another row, what I'm going to do here is put down that same piece exactly where I had it, but then I'll use my second right angle right and tucked inside the first one, pop in that triangle, and then I can line the stamp set up against that. I know everything's going to be at the same angle, and it's just going to be a nice crisp line all the way across my card. It's going to make this background super easy to do. So I bumped up that stamp set. Once I'm happy with the placement, I'll go ahead and pick it up with the lid of my MISTI and stamp it down. Then when I need to go up another row, I can just go ahead and move that up. Now each one of these little corners, the plastic piece is probably about 1 inch, so I just move that up 1 inch from the last place I had it, and then I can just go ahead and continue stamping out my background. I am using Desert Sand from Memento to go ahead and stamp out this stamp. It's a very light ink, and I am double stamping it each time just to get that nice, a little bit darker. If I don't double stamp this ink, it's great for no line coloring because you can barely see it. I wanted it to be a little bit more noticeable, which is another reason I like to use my MISTI to do double stamping. It's especially helpful if you have a few dry ink pads. It's just great to be able to double stamp and know that it's going to line up each and every time. So I'm going to show you one last time here. I went ahead and moved my little triangle up the inch that it needs to be. Then I've placed my triangle that I'm using as my guide right in that angle. I bump my stamp up against it, and then I can pick it up with the lid of my MISTI. I just continue to move this around as I need to fill in my entire card panel. Now once I had gotten the entire upper part done, I just went ahead and flipped my panel around and did the bottom half as well. Now with that piece completely finished, I know that whenever I put this over my card base that I've already stamped out, it's going to line up perfectly. My angles on my card background are perfect. Everything just worked out really well, and it didn't take a lot of effort. To make sure that everything gets lined up properly once I've colored in those images with my alcohol markers, I pop my card base back into my MISTI, use that bottom corner to line up the card base and the front panel that I put over the top with regular adhesive, and everything lined up perfectly. I did finish the inside of that card with the same stamp set. I stamped a little sentiment, colored in some cute bunnies, and that completely finished that card off. It was that simple. So I've got my last card here. I'm actually going to make 2 cards, but it's exactly the same layout. For this, I'm going to be using the new baby stamp set from Joy Clair Stamps, and I will be making 2 cards like I said. So I am starting off with 2 panels that are A2 sized, and they are made from white cardstock. Again, I'm using that little corner that helps bump away my paper from the edges because I'm going to use this onesie from that stamp set, but I'm going to stamp it off the card panel, and if I were to put this in that corner of my MISTI, it'll run into the side of it. Then you won't get a crisp, clean stamp. So you can turn your card panel if you want to. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way though. Sometimes you just don't have the room. So this corner, again, just helps me bump that panel away so I can fit in that onesie and stamp it down off the card base. I'm going to be using 2 different color combinations here and make more of a girl baby card and a boy baby card. I'm starting off with my more girly one and a pink memento ink, and I stamp that onesie down in the bottom right hand corner. Now all I have to do once I have that onesie lined up the first time is switch out my panel, go ahead and put a clean one in there. I've cleaned off my stamp. Now I can go ahead and ink this up with a blue ink and stamp this down. Now, if you weren't switching inks like I am here, this would go a lot faster, but if you wanted to make like baby shower cards, baby shower invitations, or like little favor tags, this is going to be your best friend when you have to make a lot of anything, and I'll go more into that with my next video. Like I said, as I'm working around and moving around creating this background here with that same stamp, I'm just switching it up here and there. I want to tell you more about this month with Joy Clair. This month, Joy Clair Stamps and the MISTI design team are teaming up together, and we are all using Joy Clair Stamps and MISTI the entire month. So you'll see a lot of different projects using these stamp sets and also these tools from the My Sweet Petunia store and how to integrate them in your card making. So make sure you keep coming back to both websites and blogs each and every day. There's going to be a ton of tutorials and just a lot of inspiration. It's going to be a great time. Alright, now I'm moving on to my 3rd stamp in this, and this one I'm going to keep the same color on both cards, so it's going to go super quick. I've got a gray ink that I'm going to throw into both cards and kind of put in my neutral color of the palette. So I stamped that down, and I am double stamping each one of these stamps, so you can see I've already stamped it down once on the pink card, and I'll stamp it down a second time as well, and it lines up perfectly. Alright, I'm moving on to my 4th stamp for this, and I'm going to go back to my purple ink and stamp this down. Again, this entire card, I'm using that corner in the top right hand corner to help bump away my card panel from that edge so everything lines up perfectly, and I can just continue to stamp each and every panel and just switch out my card panels as needed. I'll go ahead and give this one a last double stamp, and then my final stamp was a little gray onesie in the bottom right hand corner, and I'll do it on my final panel as well. Now, whenever I make backgrounds like this, I like to go ahead and have my first image hang off the side a little bit because inevitably you are not going to get all of the images to fit perfectly on the paper. It gives it more of an authentic pattern paper look if you have some hanging off the edges here and there. To finish these cards off, I cut a few banners from white cardstock from just a die I had on hand, and it's got this great scripty congrats little sentiment in this set. I stamped that on the banner, again using that corner to bump away my banner from the side. Mostly the top on this one, just so it would fit in there. It's a little bit large sentiment with a lot of scripty letters on it that get a little tall, so I needed to bump it away from that top edge. To finish this card off, I'm going to pop each panel onto an A2 top folding white card base. Again, I am inserting that card base into my MISTI, then I just line up the corners on the bottom and also the side there and just press straight down, and I know my panel is going to line up each and every time over the card base perfectly. For my sentiment, I'm going to highlight it with a frame that I made from gray cardstock. I just used a scallop rectangle die with a smaller regular rectangle inserted inside and made my frame that way. I've done it a ton of times. You can see it plenty of times on my channel. I popped up the banner right in the center of that frame with a little dimensional adhesive. And to dress these up, I'm going to add some enamel accents, or these are Nuvo drops actually. I've got a lime green color, and then on this purple and pink card, I'm going to add some silver drops to that. With that done, that completely finished those cards. They're very simple and easy cards to do, but I absolutely love the way they turned out. And because I used my MISTI and my Creative Corners for all of these cards, they came together super quick. Here's one final look at all of those cards. That does it for me today. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to come back all this month for Joy Clair Stamps and the MISTI collaboration. There's a few links on the left side of your screen you can click on. Happy crafting, everyone!